This is an overview of the lesson plan Introduction to Macroeconomic Indicators and Assessment Preview. So this is lesson 3.2 in Econofil's Macroeconomics unit. It's part of our one semester on-level high school curriculum. So this lesson is a little unique in that it is an assessment preview, even though it's only the second lesson in the unit. And that is because we are doing a multi-part assessment in Unit 3. So to zoom out a little bit, we've got 20 lessons in Unit 3, and this is lesson 3.2. And then we've got 4 parts to the assessment spread out throughout the unit. So part 1, and then part 2, and then parts 3 and 4 come at the end of the unit. So we'll get more into that in the overview, but I just wanted to zoom out and show you where we're headed. The activator asks which patient is in better health and why, and shows patient A and B with a few different health indicators. When debriefing this with the class, you want to acknowledge that there's not one right answer here, and different students might have chose different patients based on which indicators they find most important. They also might have noticed that some of the indicators, such as weight, don't mean that much without more context. So the learning objectives are to describe the key macro indicators and to identify requirements for the assessment, which is titled A Practical Guide to the U.S. Economy. We want to reinforce the analogy of doctors assessing a patient's health is like economists evaluating economic health by looking at multiple indicators and how they interact. So for a healthy U.S. economy, we want to look at the GDP growth rate, the unemployment rate, the inflation rate, and the federal funds rate. I'm going to skip over the slides that introduce each of those 4 indicators. Again, that is just an introduction, and throughout the unit we'll get more into all 4 of these. Then we'll go into introducing the assessment. We'll distribute a handout for students to read through an overview of the assessment and make notes of any questions, and then we'll do a check for understanding. Since you can't read it right now, I will go over the criteria for success. The 4 parts include describing key indicators and explain why they matter, provide advice about what to do and what not to do based on indicator trends, locate sources of current reputable data, and create an economic dashboard. We found that having students read through the overview and then doing a true-false check for understanding is a great way to reinforce key components of the assessment while identifying any common areas of confusion. This assessment is designed to prepare you to interpret economic data so you can make better decisions for yourself in the future. Is true. You will complete all 4 parts of the assessment outside of class, and that's false. There will be time during class to complete the assessment. You will have the opportunity to complete revisions on parts 1 and 2. And that is true. If students elect to complete revisions, they'll turn it in along with part 4 of the assessment. You will create a report to demonstrate your understanding, and that is false. Students are going to create a user-friendly guide, not a report. The timeline is we're going to have some lessons on GDP and unemployment, and then they'll complete part 1 of the assessment that focuses on those indicators. Then lessons on inflation and the federal funds rate. Part 2 will focus on those 2 indicators. Then there'll be some lessons on learning more about monetary and fiscal policy and some challenges and critiques. And then we'll complete parts 3 and 4 of the assessment. And again, along with part 4, they can submit revisions. Parts 1 and 2 ask students to describe indicators and how they're measured. And we do provide these templates for students to use. You can decide to use them electronically or as printouts. Hopefully that'll be comforting for any students who might feel a little overwhelmed and wondering if they have to create this from scratch. They don't, they can use a template. For part 3, creating an economic dashboard, students will need to find sources of data and outline trends for each of the 4 indicators. And then they're going to use that data to provide advice to an imaginary young person who's facing a decision. In part 4, they're going to do a reflection responding to 2 prompts, and again, submit the revisions if they elected to do so. We've got a rubric for each of the 4 parts. And the summarizer for today's lesson asks how their future self might benefit to a user's guide such as the one that they're creating during this unit. When you try lesson 3.2, we would love to hear how it goes. We've got a link to a feedback form at the end of the slides. And if you have any questions on implementing this lesson or the Unit 3 assessment, please feel free to reach out to us.